This podcast today contains discussions about child suicide, which may be distressing or triggering for some individuals. Please proceed with caution and prioritise your own emotional well-being. If you are someone or someone you know is struggling, support is available. Please reach out to a trusted professional or a crisis hotline in your area for immediate help.
I walked in to find him and I honestly thought he was joking. I was like, what are you doing? And then I realised he wasn't joking. I've never screamed that much in my life, and I've never expelled so much air from my body trying to get your child to breathe. I now, from replaying that back in my head, I now know that they were defibrillating him. I remember them saying, clear, clear, everybody clear.
My guest today is the astounding, inspiring Ellen Roome. Good afternoon. Thank you. We've got so much to cover, and there are so many things I want to talk about. But rather than me do, I've obviously got notes and I've done lots of research about you and the story and the background. Give me a 30-second snapshot of who you are and possibly what people will know you as at this moment in time.
I've become a campaigner for social media change and online safety after my son died in April 2022. And I initially just started as a mum saying this is wrong and shouting about it very loudly. It seems to have got a lot of traction and people seem to be listening, which is lovely.
Super. Thank you. And lots of people, they can start watching this and they'll see your name and they can go and Google and then they'll be able to read all the information. Lots of content out there about Jools Law. We are obviously going to talk about Jools today to a certain point, but when we've spoken about arranging today and getting this together, I've always been very clear to you. People can go and read about Jools Law and the amazing work you're doing. The Magical Mindset podcast is not about focusing on the drama, the negativity, and I can't even start thinking about the pain you've been through. That's not what this is about. The reason I was really keen to talk to you and to meet you and having read and watched you a few times is actually focusing on you, because we're trying to create a podcast and a following of individuals who watch things such as this and they can see everything that's gone on. But it's about how on earth somebody like you gets through. How on earth somebody like you holds it together. How on earth somebody like you looks forwards. I am a parent, and you often talk about things that have been really, really bad. But I think many, many people, anybody who is a parent, to lose your child for whatever reason, I don't think any of us can comprehend.
I don't think there's anything worse. I have actually gone through it in my mind thinking, what could be possibly worse than this? Somebody must have had it harder, or and I can't. The only thing that came close was losing a child and not knowing whether they're alive or deceased. I think would be hard because you're almost expecting them to walk in the door still, or hoping. At least I kind of know that Jools is never going to walk in the door. That's the only thing I could get to. But it's hard.
We'll talk about Jools Law and all the campaigning, and because it's going to be vitally important we do. But what I want to do first is bring out you. Find out about you. And so let's talk about you, because you had a very successsul career and you've had a life before all this happened. Mm-hmm. So let's just talk about you and tell me the childhood, the background, and let's just talk about that so we can, when we talk about what's happened, we're talking about a real person and a real background, and go from there.
Well, I would say go back to my schooling. So I ended up going to boarding school. My father was in the Air Force, so we moved around a lot. And I went to boarding school at age 8, which, because my brother had actually begged or said boarding school was great and you'd love it. So I begged and went, and I hated it.
When you were 8-year-old, that was what you wanted?
Yeah. And I hated it. They used to take me out of my bed and leave me on a chair at the end of the corridor and say, sit there till you finish crying, because I was so homesick. And I never told my mum and dad, which is really bizarre because I just dealt with it. And years later, my poor parents said, why on earth didn't you tell us? And I said, don't really know. I just dealt with it. And then I left boarding school and I went to school in Scotland. We moved up to Scotland for a couple of years, which I adored, being at a normal school. But then when we came back to England, my dad actually said we're a year behind the English system now because we got posted back down to England. And I went back to boarding school, a different one. And I still hated it. And then at 15, I struggled a lot with writing, reading, standing up in class, reading out a textbook. I would dread. And it wasn't until I was 15 they diagnosed me with having dyslexia, which sort of explained everything. But what they did is put me into a set where I couldn't get more than a grade C on everything, and which I found was wrong. I always excelled at maths, and I always thought, well, I could have got more than a grade C if they'd given me the chance. And anyway, so I decided to leave school at 16, and I thought, well, I'll do the two subjects I like, maths and physics. So I went and did engineering, which there were 37 girls and 3 guys, and they said, well, you're never going to succeed because you're a girl. I think at that point in my life, I stuck 2 fingers up to them and went, watch me. And it's an awful thing to say to children that, you can't do something. And my parents were not like that. My parents always said, so long as you try to the best of your ability, then that's all we ever asked for. They were really supportive parents. And so when I was at 16 doing engineering, I just went, I'm going to prove you're wrong. I'm going to do this. And I did.
Did you end up doing engineering? Was there a little bit of, I'm going to prove people wrong here?
Yes, absolutely. It was 100% that. Yeah, 100%. I'm going to prove I can do this. And I got lots of distinctions. I got offered a place at King's College London. I didn't go because I was in love at the time. So I thought, I'll have a year out. I never went to university. But my school had always said I was never going to be university material. You're never going to achieve anything in life. And again, I proved them wrong. So I ran a successful financial company, mortgages and insurance company, for 18 years. And until after Jools died, I went back into the office, and I remember hearing some of my staff complain about the coffee. I remember thinking, do you think I give a damn about your coffee?
Was this after Jools?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And at that point, I just then, I need to get out. Yeah. So I sold the company in March 24.
Right. So career's going to plan. Life was going to plan. We've talked about this offline, whatever. And you'd separated from Jools' father.
We separated when Jools was 3,
but we're
always really good friends. Yeah,
still today, and still
we had joint Christmases,
great friends.
Yeah, all the pictures that people see online of us together. It was either Matt's birthday or Jools' birthday, and we'd do things together. At Christmas, Matt would generally come to our house. So yeah, it was. We were amicable, and our friends used to say, as parents, how on earth do you co-parent? We didn't argue about money. We didn't use a divorce lawyer. We did our own divorce. And I think when parents start arguing about money and not putting the children first, that's when it has a real issue on children.
Right. So if we just go back a little bit there, so boarding school was really tough, as you say. But from there, would you say up until Jools' passing, you were a very strong character?
Yeah.
Always driven. What was the plan? What was the life plan? Was there one?
No, not really. I ran the business for so long. I think I was getting to the point of going, I need something else. I need something to challenge me. I do love challenges. And I was getting to the point of being bored with it, which is awful to say, but, doing somebody's remortgage, I can do that with my eyes closed in about 10 seconds and know which lender we're going with. And I was just thinking, this isn't grabbing me. So I was starting to get bored with it before Jools died. But I didn't really know where I was going. I certainly didn't expect it to be where I am now.
Right, no. So let's talk about Jools then. Let's talk about the build-up. He's happy, as far as you can see, happy.
He was 14 years old. Everybody in his life thought he was normal. Yes, there were a couple of days he didn't want to go to school, which I thought was normal teenager. I remember not wanting to go to school. And I remember sitting in the garden saying, is there anything wrong? Anything I need to know? Nobody knew of any bullying, no problems. School wasn't aware of anything. His friends weren't aware of anything. And then one day I came home to find he'd taken his life, which was,
We'll go to that in a moment. Because there will be people watching who are listening to you speak, watching you, who will have children. And I assume, I know this whole subject will frighten people. And I think that's
every parent's worst nightmare. And then when it happens, it's way worse than you've even thought about.
Can't even comprehend. No. But I don't know whether I'm asking for advice here for people, but I'm going to ask a question. You can say, I just can't answer that. Hindsight, it's a wonderful thing, and I know it's maybe a hard thing for me to ask you, but I'm going to ask you and you just say,
Yeah.
as you look back now from the weeks, the months before, do you see things differently?
I think both Jools' dad and I have gone through our head, what did we miss? Was there something? What did we, where did we miss something? Now, the only thing is that I feel we probably let him have social media too much. He was an only child. And so during lockdown, I used to allow him more because I felt he was talking to his friends. I'd go into his room, he'd be gaming, he'd have somebody on FaceTime or whatever video call they were using, laughing. And I justified it to myself of saying, well, he's interacting with his friends. And I honestly didn't realise quite how harmful social media is that I now know. And I guess, yes, I wish 100% I hadn't let him have as much social media as he had.
Do you think it made a difference?
My gut feeling is always it's been some sort of challenge he tried, because that was his nature. He was like his mum, pushed the boundaries, did things to the extreme. He was at the top of the tree. A friend's parent came around. He was sitting on the roof of our porch one day. He was the one that was trying to get to the middle of a lake on a pond on a boat. He pushed the boundaries. So it's the only thing that sits with me that he did something reckless, because I don't understand how we all missed depression if it was depression.
Right.
I don't.
Right. And that's really interesting, because we can watch the interviews and we can read things about you and Matt and Jools. And I don't think I'm wrong in saying most people will then go to, there's some depression there, or there's some challenge there, and everybody's missed it. Not because you're a bad
I've had somebody email me to say that it was obviously our fault because I split up from Jools' dad, and so we weren't together, and he was obviously desperately sad about us not being together. And I thought, absolute rubbish. Everybody knows that it was not that. We had fun together. There's lots of videos of us having fun together. He wasn't sad about us being together. He doesn't even remember us together. He used to say that. So, but for somebody to email me, I thought was quite pleasant that it was my fault. Whether you thought it or not, please refrain from emailing me that. I didn't need it.
You've almost got, we will go back to that. I have to, well, we're not going to, but you almost then have to ask the question, why? What was somebody email? What were they trying to get out of?
Well, I guess some people do affect their children when they split up, and it does affect them. And you see some acrimonious divorces, and I think, oh God, it don't need to be like that. And I don't say Matt and I got it right the whole time, but we had a joint WhatsApp group so that Jools couldn't play us off against each other, how kids do.
Right.
And they'd say, well, Mum says I can stay out till 8 or something. And Matt would go, did you actually say that? And go, no, I didn't. I said, come back for 7. So we had a Team Sweeney app, a Team Sweeney WhatsApp group, which just made sure we were both agreeing on everything. And I think that's really important, because kids being kids will try and get away with things.
Yeah. So let's talk about the moment, if we can, when Jools, we'll talk about, right, let's pick up on something. You almost told me off a little earlier.
Oh, did I?
You did tell me off a little
what
earlier.
Did I
but
say?
I'm glad you
Sorry.
did tell me off, because I used a phrase that I will be absolutely honest. And maybe when you said it, I thought, I have this. So let's deal with this. I said, Jools committed suicide, and you very quickly said, no, we don't say that. Explain to me what you mean.
Okay, so the word committed suicide comes from when it used to be a crime and to take your own life. And it does upset people because it's no longer a crime to end your own life. It doesn't actually offend me, but I have met a lot of people who have lost people from people taking their own life, that it is better to say death by suicide or taking their own life and drop the phrase committed. And I just didn't want you to say it wrong. And I often say that. And it's not that I'm a word police with people. I just don't want you to offend somebody out of not knowing that it could offend somebody.
That's important. And that's why I'd wanted to bring it up, because I think there are lots of people out there who would say that phrase with
I would have done.
No offence meant at all.
No.
But and when you explain it, then you go, oh, I do get that. So thank you. Let's talk about that moment. We're not doing it just for dramatic effect, but people will want to hear the story because they do, and then we talk about you. How did it all come about? Where were you? What happened? And
I'd been horse racing for the day in Cheltenham with some friends, and I'd been ringing Jools throughout the day, as I always would have done. He'd been out playing football. He'd been playing on a boat. And then he said, I said, have you eaten? He said, yeah, there's a pizza in the freezer. We ate that. And he had his very good friend Monty with him. And I said, well, he said, Mum, we started a fire pit and I couldn't start it. I used your nail varnish remover. I remember thinking, oh, I said, just be careful. And he actually videoed it. I have the video of him doing it. I don't know how he didn't burn himself. And I said, well, there's marshmallows in the cupboard, toast those. You can see on our security camera, Monty leaves at 8:46 and he's having a conversation about not liking to walk down the lane because it's dark. And Jools' last word said, see you later, Mont. As he laughs, he walks in. And Monty says, I hate it, talking about the dark lane. And Jools said, see you later, Mont. And he laughs and walks in. And that was at 8:46. Monty thought he was perfectly the same as he always was, normal. And I phoned Jools at 9:56 3 times. Jools being Jools, I expected, and I don't know if I should say it like this, but this is the words I actually expected. I expected him to go, what, Mum? I was having a poo. Typical, that's what I expected. And he didn't answer. And so I came in the door at 10:13. I went straight up to his room. He would have normally been sitting in his pants. He spent his life it was always hot, so he'd have shorts or pants on only, gaming with somebody on FaceTime and going, what's in the fridge, Mum? And I walked in to find him and I honestly thought he was joking. I was like, what are you doing? And then I realised he wasn't joking.
And there was just you and...
My ex-partner was there as well, and he was a trained pilot, so he was trained in resuscitation every year. So he was doing the majority of it until we thought we got a breath back. And then I remember trying to breathe as much air in my body and to Jools as much as possible. And I've never screamed that much in my life, and I've never expelled so much air from my body trying to get your child to breathe. And the paramedics came in. Actually, apparently it was the fire brigade that got there first. And I remember when they got there, I handed the phone to my partner at the time and I said, call Matt, Jools' dad, and call my dad. My dad's military, so I thought he'd be, I don't know what I thought. I think I thought he could help in some miraculous way. And then there were probably 20 odd people in the house. And everybody kept trying to move me away from Jools and I kept saying, I'm not leaving my baby. And they put adrenaline or something in his leg. I'm not sure on exactly medical things they do. And I do remember somebody pulling me off him for a minute and holding me away. And I was going, just make him breathe, make him breathe. And I now, from replaying that back in my head, I now know that they were defibrillating him. I remember them saying, clear, clear, everybody clear. I can't watch anybody being defibrillated on TV. I cannot watch it. It hits me straight back in the room. And then one of the paramedics took me aside into the hallway and I was sitting there with Jools' dad and my ex-partner. And he said, we have to stop. He said, even if we brought him back now, he'd be brain dead. And we both went, okay. It was just like this surreal, it was just bizarre. And then we were sitting either side along on the floor and a detective came up and said, well, I need to question you. And he was a horrible detective. He just said, where did you put the rope? And I said, well, I don't know. And he said, well, did you put it on the bed or did you put it on the floor? And I went, I don't know. And I went, I don't remember. I just took it off. And the way he questioned us was very harsh, I thought. And I remember Jools lying there and I said, I know this is going to sound daft, but I want to cover him up. He's getting cold. And so I was allowed to use his dressing gown to cover him up because they cut all his clothes off him. And Matt and I were just sitting there with our child. It was no longer breathing. It was horrific. We then had to get in the ambulance with him to go to Gloucester Hospital, just going, he looks like he just should sit up. He looks like he should sit up. It was so unreal. It was like it couldn't possibly be happening.
When you talk about that now, you literally go back there, don't you?
I can picture it. Yeah, I can. I can picture. Where I am in the room, where I'm sitting. I can picture the whole thing. Yeah.
And do you have that every day?
Yeah, I do. I think a lot of people have said I probably need some counselling. I know I struggle with post-traumatic stress disorder. And I often replay that image in my own mind, sometimes when you're going to sleep, and it's not even real. I can see him sort of taking it off. And that's apparently the stress. PTSD. And so I don't go there very often if I can help it. But unfortunately, for a long time, every time I closed my eyes to try to sleep, that would be there. But if I recount it, yeah, I can picture it vividly.
I'm not going to say I didn't want you to explain it or share it like that, because if I'm honest, I did, because that puts us at a point where anybody with any type of passion, compassion, or heart sits and looks and listens to that, and that could break anybody listening to that story. And because it's not like we're on a mainstream news thing, you are explaining something, and somebody is watching a real human there who at the point was broken. And I hope you don't mind me using
No,
that.
I still am sometimes. Yeah,
Broken.
completely. Yeah.
But there will be people who are watching and who are engaging in this, who are having phenomenally tough times in life now, and may have gone through tough time and maybe good times. As I said at the start, and as I've said to you before, I'm not sure I can think of anything worse than what you've just explained. But when we first spoke, the reason I said I won't speak to you is that I don't want to glorify, is the wrong word, or get content because of the horribleness of this. I want to share, here you are today.
Well, yeah, and I think statistically, the loss of a child, particularly by suicide, apparently, I can't remember what the exact statistics are, but the chances of you as a parent taking your own life after that is vast. And I remember saying to Matt, Jules' dad, I said, "So is that you or me then?" And he went, "Well, I'm not going anywhere." Well, for me, I struggle with it a lot harder. It's not a competition. I don't mean it like that. I said,
No.
I win. It was. I don't think he felt. I mean, obviously he struggled, but we grieve quite differently, and we've noticed that now is that we grieve very differently. He's very personal, doesn't want to talk about it, whereas I'm very much world. I'm going to change the world somehow, and I don't know. It's given me a drive to even to push on, but he's quite different about it. But at the time, he won't mind me admitting, we both did the same thing. We turned to alcohol to numb it. You go for, well, I'm talking for me. I drank a lot because you don't want the reality of what you're having to deal with. It is constant. So I get to lunchtime and I go, oh, it's acceptable to start drinking because it's lunchtime, and then carried on drinking. I did actually end up going to rehab 6 months after Jools died.
One thing we can't do is go down the rabbit hole of alcohol and addiction, because then I'm going to, because of my background. But
Okay.
but we will.
Right.
What I want to do, because I want to now work on the rebuild,
Okay.
or talk about the rebuild. I know you're not free of it all, but the point is that there will be things you talk about right now that I said this to you yesterday when we spoke on the phone. I genuinely believe, as you talk now going forwards about where you are, and from the moment it happened and going forward, there will be, I don't care if it's one person, and I think you're the same as me. I don't care if there's one person out there who watches this podcast next week or in a year's time, where listening to you speak lights something, triggers something that means they turn the corner. For me, and I said this to you, and that hopefully you maybe never know, but that will give you something, and we then give that back to Jools. And
I've always said if I could make something positive out of the loss of Jools, then that's what I aim to do. And it got worse after Jools died, as I fell down a hill and broke my ankle and my leg.
You told me. So you go through the immediate shock aftermath of what's happened. So within the coming days, weeks, where did you get to as a person mentally and emotionally? How hard was it? Can you explain?
Existing. You don't care. The days, weeks after you lose a child, somebody literally would have to put something in front of me and say, eat something. And I'd say, I'm not hungry. And I'd eventually start eating it. I couldn't get in the shower. First of all, because I had Jools' sick in my hair and I couldn't wash it out. I didn't want to wash the last bit of my child away.
Really?
And no, I couldn't get in the shower. And as hard as that was, it was my last little bit of my boy in my hair. And that probably sounds a bit weird to some people, but I couldn't I couldn't wash it out initially.
It doesn't sound weird. It sounds heartbreaking because actually you can. And
It's all
people,
I had left of my child.
yes,
Yeah. And then you go through all the things where you go and see them in a morgue, and you're like, what am I actually doing? It's like surreal. And yeah, all I can explain is you exist, and then you almost act. You put on this sort of coping mechanism, like I'm normal, and then you look back at it at the end of the day and go, "Why am I acting like I'm normal? My child's not here," And it's really bizarre. It's like having an out of body experience. It's like you're watching somebody else's life replay out in front of you, and you're going, well, "Actually, that's mine, and actually, I'm dealing with this." And so I used to sit and talk to my dad when I was little about. We used to talk. Well, I'd say late teenager, little, and we used to talk about putting things in a box and compartmentalizing. I can't say that word.
I'm not even going to try.
Compartmentalization. There we go. And I think when I was younger, I certainly used to put things into a box, and then my dad said, "You've got to take that out of the box at some point, Ellen." But I am pretty good. It's almost, I put it in a box, close the door, and you leave it there for a bit, and then I find with me, my depression gets to a point where I collapse, and then I can't function again. It's almost like I go straight back to how I was when Jools first died. I will quite regularly take myself back to Jools's bed, and I'll get into Jools's bed with his teddy bear, and I just want to stay there and cry because I don't want to be anywhere else. And
you still have that today.
Yeah, not as often, but yeah, I do. And it's something I don't often talk about, and I come across particularly on TV. Somebody said to me once, "Well, you're obviously fine. I've seen you on national TV holding it together." And I thought, wow, if you think I can hold it together for 10 minutes and not have those deep, dark, very sad days, then that still happens.
And again, the TV, whichever channel it is, I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Because, I think what they are doing, they're giving you an amazing platform on the campaign you're on, which we'll talk about, which is fabulous. I still don't think we get to know the real you.
I guess it hasn't been about me.
Yeah.
It's been about my campaign and what I wanted to achieve. So sometimes maybe I'm reluctant to talk about me on that platform because how I feel kind of almost is irrelevant. I think it's about changing the law for others and doing things. I kind of think my feelings need to be parked for that. I don't know.
And I don't know whether we'll agree to disagree because I have no right to disagree with what you're saying. Because
you have an opinion.
But my view is the campaign, which we will talk about. I keep saying that we will.
Yes, okay.
Is going to have a profound effect. But it's the effect. But I think there's an effect you can have on other people, not who have lost a child or anything like that. It's about how you get through, and it may be I've lost a job or I'm depressed or whatever, and I'm no shame in saying, yeah, but do you want to listen to Ellen and what she went through? And that's really, really bad. And if you are serious about whether the word is recovery, I don't know whether that's the right word, or looking forward to moving forwards. If Ellen can, I'm not saying Ellen can, so anybody can, but what you need to do is listen to what she did and how she did it. And so you talked about, what we've got to talk about, because you talked about alcohol. And just before Jools passing, did you drink then? Was it?
Oh yeah, I've always liked to drink, but I think it certainly became a crux.
Did you drink too much before?
Probably did. Yeah, probably did. I definitely drank way more after Jools died.
Yeah.
So I think, yes, I probably drank too much. And then afterwards, it numbed it a bit. Until you got to the point that you drank so much that you're just crying even more so, and realised actually that drink and grief is not a good place. That took me a long time to realise that.
Right.
So 3 months after Jools died, I ended up walking up a hill, fell, broke my wrist, and my battery's dead on my phone. And I went, "Oh, come on, Jools, get me home." And carried on walking, fell again, slid down a big ravine, and thought, "Oh, get up, Ellen, get up." And went to stand up and thought, can't put my weight on my ankle. And turned out I had dislocated and broken my ankle. And then I said, "Oh, help." Anybody out there, help me, which was about at that level. I was then found by 3 individual nurses and then a solicitor that came up to me and said, "Are you Ellen Roome?" I thought, "Don't recognise me now." And I was,
Of all the things going on, that was
that
what
was
went through your
really,
mind.
yes,
I just don't want to be
I don't want to
recognised.
be recognised. And then the fire brigade came in and they were trying to put me on a stretcher. And I went, honestly, just give me a push. Put me on a stretcher and see where I end up. I don't care. I didn't care.
Did you mean that? At
Yes,
the time?
I actually did. This is possibly awful to say, I wish I'd broken my neck at the time. I didn't want to be here.
You said that to me on the phone, whether it yesterday or the other day. And I wonder whether you would say that today.
Yes, I would.
Right.
Yeah. It's exactly how I felt. I didn't want my life anymore. I didn't want to be here.
12, 18 months on from that moment. A very blunt question. Are you glad you didn't?
Ooh. That's a really hard question.
You can always say I'm not answering it.
No, I'll always take a question. I still don't want my life I have, but it doesn't mean I'm ever going to end it. It just means I have to make it into something different. And that's possibly where I draw strength from, because I can't take my life. I know how that would affect people. I'm one of those people that's affected. So I will never take my life, but it doesn't mean I don't want it. It just means you have to find a way of changing it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, but we might just, I always say the podcast is about discussions and they can go in any direction. And sometimes I don't know which direction. Yeah. You've just said something there that 3 months after that you said you genuinely wanted to take your life. If you had done, that was okay. You've now just said that you never want to take your life. I've been asked this question because of what I've talked about myself, whatever. Do you think you have total control mentally of never going back to that place again where you want to take your life?
I don't want to answer that in the wrong way that would affect somebody else's life, but no, I don't think I have. I worry when I get to the end of whatever I'm doing, then where's my life going? Because I used to be a planner in my life. I plan everything, and I don't know where I'm going. I'm literally I'm going in that direction, 100 miles an hour, but I'm not quite sure where the end of it is. Where's the destination? And I don't know. But I really don't want to say something that somebody would think the wrong thing about that.
People ask me 2 questions. Will you ever drink again? Because I was an alcoholic and I got sober. And I go, anybody who was ever an alcoholic, whoever says, if they say, I don't miss drinking, I'll go, that's a lie, because you do. Can I absolute hand on heart say I will never drink again? I never, ever, ever want to drink again, ever. And I have to work on that every single day.
Yeah.
I'm not talking 12 steps here. I'm talking about I have to think every day. I think every day it'd be good to have a pint. Do this now, go into Leeds, have a few pints and have a laugh. And that will never go away, but I know I won't. I got to a stage where I was very, very close. I believe I was very close. I told the story of thinking of taking my own life, and people say to me, are you okay now? And I always find that what do you mean, am I okay? Will you ever? I'll go, I will never take it for granted. I work on it every single day. I talk to myself. I do all the things I talk about, whether it be meditation or working on myself every single day, to make sure I'm strong enough or aware enough is probably a better word of the darkness could come again.
I don't know how I feel about that. I don't really know. I think, I mean, I have been so low that I've stood in Jools' bedroom and copied what he did. I was thinking, well, what were you thinking when you did this? Why were you thinking that? And I remember coming downstairs and there was somebody downstairs in my house and I said, could you just hold me? I need to be held. I'd been up there for 5 hours, written every sort of letter you could possibly imagine. I don't know if that was just to get my feelings out. I don't know if they were really goodbye letters, but they were just like, I don't know. But I've written them all. I still have them. I haven't been able to read them. And I came down and said, could you just hold me? I could do with a cuddle. And he said, I don't have any energy to give you any. I don't have any energy to give you any more cuddles. I've run out of them. And I remember, I don't know how I got through that night. It was particularly low. I do not know how I made it through that night.
And that we're not going to go into. We will, as I said to you, we'll allow other people to make their judgments on that. But that's where you felt alone?
Oh, I felt very alone, yeah. I've been on my own for the last 18 months, so all of the campaigning I've missed the most is actually walking in and going, "Can you give me a hug? I need a hug." And actually, after I got the forensics results the other day, I went round to Jools' friend's house and I did walk into their house and go, "I need a hug." And we just stood in the hallway with them all hugging me. And to do all that and go back on your own and have nobody even to chat it through. I mean, I'm surrounded by lovely friends and family. I'm very fortunate, but it's not quite the same as when you walk in tired, that there's somebody to put their arm around you and give you a cuddle. And that's probably one of the things I've missed the most.
One thing I never profess to talk about or give any advice on is relationships. Do you think you will ever be in a place where you will be able to open up and give that love to somebody else, where it's not all about the campaign on Jools, where it's all about, where you just go, no, this is me and you?
Yeah, I do, actually. Yeah. I really do. I don't know how I worry that somebody would find me difficult to be with, because I'm going to have moments that are still low and I'm going to miss my child. And I sometimes wonder, if I met somebody that also lost a child, would that be an understanding? I don't know. Or do people have that empathy where I've got friends of mine that, get it, and they understand I have low days. Or then you've got the birthdays, the Christmas, the anniversary, all the other days that just hit you as well. I'd like to think that maybe I could meet somebody. I can't plan that bit of my life. It's just my future.
I nearly said the funny thing is it's not funny, but the interesting thing for me is that you just said something there.
Oh.
That you said, for no impact whatever. There will be people out there who haven't gone through what you've got to, but who have maybe out the other side of a relationship or something's happened and they're on their own.
Mm.
And they're sat there thinking, yeah, it's all well and good you being positive, Cliff, and giving me these tools, but never will I be able to give myself or open up into a relationship again. I'm never going to be happy again. I'm always going to be on my own. You've just sat there and having everything you've been through, and then you talked about that moment where, somebody didn't want to give you that, but you've just said, no, I think it will come.
Well, I think with any relationship split, I think I'd struggle with trust again. To have your heart broken over a trust issue is painful. But it's never. So I've been with people who haven't been faithful to me in the past and so on, and that hurts. It really hurts. And at the time, you think it really hurts. I've lost a child. It doesn't hurt at that level. And so I kind of think, well, it can't be that bad, can it? Because I've managed to survive child loss so far that even if I did get together with somebody again that was unfaithful, I hope I don't. I really had enough crap in my life. Could I just have something normal? Yeah.
Do you use that in everyday life? If something happens?
Oh, that it's never going to be as bad?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
As I was thinking of that question, I thought, can I ask that? But yeah.
I absolutely. You almost have no fear, because you think, well, it's never going to be as bad. What's the worst that can happen? It really can't be as bad. And actually, when I was in Parliament, just skipping ahead very quickly, there was one of the other bereaved dads at the end the other day, and at the end of it, he clapped really loudly, and the usher told him to be very quiet. And he said afterwards, what's the worst that can happen? And I thought, I understand that feeling. I do it all the time. Just give it a go, because what's the worst that can happen? It's never going to be as bad as I've gone through.
If you were talking to somebody else now who was having a tough time, would you use that phrase? Look, what's the worst that can happen?
Yes, I would.
Yeah,
depending on the situation. But I mean, yes, I would say, give it a go. What's the worst? You get in trouble. Somebody tells you off. I mean, I'm not saying do something illegal or anything like that. But push the boundaries a bit and have some fun. Give it a go. Try. And if you don't, that goes back to what my dad used to say to me, isn't it? Did you try your best? If you tried your absolute hardest at something, then you can't do any more than that. And I used to say that to Jools as well, because I thought it was such a lovely line. Just try your best. Just push it. Just push and try your best.
Some of the triggers there. Your father, mum and dad are still alive.
Yes.
There will probably be grandparents out there who worry about this. How are you happy to come? How are they? How? Because you talk about your dad. I think you have a really good relationship with your dad.
I do have a good relationship with both of them. They're quite different. So my mum, they're not together. So my mum is into her spiritualism. So sometimes she acts like Jools is just in the next room, and I find that hard. That's her belief, but I find it really hard sometimes to go, Mum, he's not next door, and he's not just out of eyesight, but because she believes that you all carry on living in a spirit world and that sort of thing.
But does that help your mum?
Yes, it does help her. Yeah, that she believes in it. She absolutely believes in it. Always has done for years and years.
Even before? Right.
Yeah, she's gone to the spiritual church for as long as I can ever remember.
Right.
And so that helps her, and that's her way of dealing with it. My dad and I have always had very logical conversations. I'm quite a bit of both of them, especially like my mum. When I get going, my hands go like she does, and I get my dad's sensibleness and thinking something through. But I do have a good relationship with both of them. Yeah.
How is so? Your mum's got the spiritual side. Your dad military. So I can visualize what he will be like.
He was an RAF officer all of his life.
How's he dealt with it?
I hope he doesn't mind me saying he's found it really hard.
Yeah.
Really hard. And actually, he's seen an awful lot of things in his military career that, I mean, he was in charge of all the airplane crashes at one point, seeing bits of bodies in an aeroplane, some quite disturbing images. And he found the loss of Jools, and also I called him that night. He came, he saw what I saw. He saw Jools when they finished working on him and not breathing. I remember he came in, put his arm around me, and I said, Dad, Matt needs your cuddles too. And he went, of course. He just wasn't thinking about it, and he came in and sat in between of us and put his arm around both Matt and I. And he said, oh, Jools, what did you do? Or something like that. I remember him just saying that, and then he was ushered out the room because they wanted to interview us. He struggled.
You've gone through the alcohol phase.
Mm-hmm.
You've then, I think you said you went to rehab. Did you go to rehab?
My family suggested I went to rehab, which was really
politely.
Yeah, which was really stupid because looking back, they said, well, you might lose, if you carry on drinking, you'll lose the most important people in your life. And I thought, I've already lost them. I said, well, if you carry on drinking, you might die. And I went, okay. And I was thinking, this is too early for me. So I did extra counselling every other day, which I was trying to use as grief counselling. Interesting. That just made me think of something. You asked me what happened that night. Not one counsellor has ever got me to talk through what I saw that night, which I find really bizarre. I've never told a counsellor exactly that night as I remember it in my brain, which surely I've got some processing to do somewhere at some point about that.
There are people far cleverer than me who will have the answer for that.
Yeah.
Far cleverer.
So rehab, I did a month of not drinking, and then came back and went to Antigua and drank a lot of rum. So wasn't really the answer. I don't drink as much anymore. I do also think because the relationship split as well after that, there was a lot of volatility there that I was again using alcohol as a crux. And now I can sit at home and not think I need a glass of wine. But if I go out with friends, I do like an old glass of wine also. But I'm nowhere near what I was like before.
So we've moved on. You've got yourself moving again. So let's talk about Jools Law. Let's explain what it is and what you're trying to achieve.
Back in March 24, I tried to get Jools' data from social media companies, and they said, as a parent, we have no legal right to obtain his data. And I said, well, that's the only thing that wasn't checked, and it might give us answers as to whether you do read about these sextortion cases. And unfortunately, I've now met parents that have lost children like that. I didn't even know what that was. I had to Google what the word was, where they're blackmailed online with images. I mean, that's how I feel stupid for saying I didn't even know, but I wanted it not entered my world. It wasn't part of my world. So I wanted to know whether he was being blackmailed, whether he was being bullied online, and I wasn't allowed to see it.
So I understand that bit, and because I've looked into it, but have the police seen that?
So they took his phone and the forensic system was down. So they usually hook it up to a forensic system. And I remember the detective saying, the system's down. I'm having to look through it manually. she said she didn't really know what she was doing looking through it manually. I mean, she's not a forensics person. She's a detective. And at the time, I wasn't strong enough to challenge that. So she uncovered, well, the police report is half an age 4 page on about his social media. And it says Snapchat logged out, Instagram, and he names one account, looked at various pictures, nothing to note. And so there was some one-line comment on TikTok or something. I've since found out that Jools had multiple social media accounts, 3 TikTok, 3 Instagram, and 2 Snapchat. So that was never looked at. And I tried to get the data, but after a certain amount of time, the data stored on the phone is no longer there. So social media companies wouldn't release it to me.
Right.
So I started a petition, and I said, right, this is ridiculous. Parents should have the right to see it. I had somebody else's charity had sent me the response you get at 10,000 from the government, and it says, it didn't word it like this, but I took it as, thanks very much for trying, but you didn't get quite enough. And that really spurred me on. And I said to a friend, we're going to go for 100,000 because that guaranteed a debate.
This is 100,000 signatures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was in April. At the end of April, I said that. And then my mum, bless her, put something on social media and said, well, you've only got until the 30th of May. And I said, no, Mum, it's the end of November. You got it wrong. She went, no, it says May, Ellen. And I then went onto the government site. And because of the government election, they decided to close the petitions early. So I did have only until the 30th of May. And I thought, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? And then it was on my birthday, 21st of May. And I put a post up on social media saying, for my birthday, I just really like one wish that you sign my petition, which went viral. And then a lovely lady, Grace, contacted me and said, you need to do a video. And through that, we managed to get 115,000 signatures in 10 days. And then they closed the petition. But it just seemed like masses of people were saying, we were watching the petition, it was, every time it was counting up, they're going, it's going up, you're going to do it. And it was lovely. It was really rewarding.
As that was happening, how did you feel?
I would get up every morning, and our house is on 3 floors, and Jools used to have the floor, we used to call it his penthouse suite, the top floor. He had a bedroom and then a sort of sofa room. And I'd walk past the stairwell and I'd say, morning, Jools, get up, we've got stuff to do. And as though he was a teenager still in bed. And I just worked flat out, and everybody said, you need to keep commenting on everything on social media to build the algorithms. And I was thinking, I can't keep up with this. I was going from Instagram, which I didn't really use beforehand, Facebook, TikTok, I even did X, although I'm not really keen on that. And then I'd have WhatsApp messages and emails, and it was just a constant keeping up with it. But I was determined. And I remember my dad saying, do you want to come for a roast? And I said, no, I'm not. I can eat in a week's time. I've got a week to do this. We're not, it was phenomenal. It was real sense of achievement.
You're talking about what you did and the achievement. How did you feel? Did the pain shift a little bit? Was there a feeling inside that you feel as though life was going again?
No.
Still really?
No. Still just, this is what I've got to achieve. This is what I've got to do.
Right.
But no, I didn't. And then, no, the pain doesn't go.
Yeah.
You just have to put it aside for a minute and go, I'm focusing on this. And then I think the reality of, after I got to the end of the petition, I had these cycles, and it's a bit like a tidal wave. Excuse me. A bit like a massive wave that comes in, knocks you off your feet, and you lose your breath. It takes everything out of you, and you have to pick yourself up, and you have to rebuild again. And that's a bit like grief for me, that I have these bouts when I crash. And my good friend, I have 2 very good friends. I have lots of good friends, that sounds bad, but 2 in particular who have messaged me every day since Jools has died.
Really? Several
Several times a day. And they know when I'm really low that a purple heart means, you can just go away, world. I don't want to speak to anybody, but I'm still here, and I'm okay-ish, but I'm not doing so well. And so we have a purple heart symbol.
Do they worry about you?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I open up quite regularly to them. So I would regularly say, can I get hit by a bus this weekend or something? And they go, no, you've got to get enough signatures for a petition. You're going to have to stick with it.
Right.
And joking with me. And I much prefer that attitude than somebody goes, well, are you feeling really low? Yeah, I am feeling really low. And a very good friend of mine, Charmaine, often says, I wouldn't want your life either, but you're here and you've got some stuff to do. So we need to get on with it. And I'm like, okay then. But she can see that my life is hard. And I don't mean to come across as woe is me, but it is hard. And I have to find a new purpose. And I guess this is my purpose. This is now, I'm so passionate that it started off wanting just Jools' data. And then I met these other bereaved parents and it became a bigger thing. And it became, I couldn't even stop if I wanted to. And Matt, Jools' dad, said, you can stop if it's too painful. I went, I can't stop. I've got other parents that are now counting on me. I can't stop. And he just meant if it was too hard for me to deal with.
So let's talk about where are the government at?
So we went to Parliament on the 13th of January, and I sat there with one of the other mums next to me. They said yes. They said yes. And I was surreal. They all seemed to agree that this is wrong. And afterwards, the minister came up and shook my hand with me, and I said, they're going to line up a meeting that we go in and meet the minister with the people that actually write the laws. There's two things I want. There's one, that parents should have the right to see the social media retrospectively. So like me at the moment, I'd have to go to the High Court to get his data at a cost of £86,000, which is ridiculous. So I think retrospectively, there needs to be a law that we can access that. But going forward, after my petition, something came out in the King's speech, which wasn't there when my petition was going through, which the coroner will now have the power to demand that information. What I have said is it needs to be compulsory, a bit like a toxicology report. When a child dies, that is done automatically. They need to automatically request that social media, and hopefully they will never need it. But if it's done, then at least it's there. Otherwise, you will have people like me, where the police and the coroner didn't request it, and therefore it's too late. It goes through an inquest, and you don't know to request it, or the data's been deleted.
When will you get that?
I don't know. So I'm waiting to speak to the minister. I'm not sure on the process of it. Hopefully we can tweak the data bill that's going through, but I'm not sure how long that takes. So it won't be a new Jools law as such. I don't care that Jools' name is in it. So long as that is in there and the law has changed, that's great. It's done its job. Just because I happen to call it Jools Law, which we always said Jools would laugh at because it looks a bit like coleslaw when you write it down.
Okay, all right.
He just had a sense of humour. Yeah. But I don't know that process. But we'll wait and see. But it's probably not going to be is that a year, 2 years? I don't know how long it's going to be. So it's not going to help me going forward, but it will help other parents.
I know you do, but you must see that's going to have such a positive impact. Just what you are doing.
It's funny, I even in the car today, my dad drove me to the station and I said, it feels weird, Dad. People are saying, look what you've achieved. I don't feel I've done anything. And he went, you have. And I went, I don't feel I have. I've just been one mum that shouted that this is wrong. And I've shouted in Jools' memory. But people are listening. I guess I could have shouted and nobody heard and nobody done anything. But
you have shouted and people have heard.
Until I see it written down in the law, I haven't achieved it. Then I might go, oh, I had something to do with that.
But even by talking about it and people, there will be, you said a few moments ago that, and you've got me thinking, because I have a 14-year-old daughter, I have an older daughter and a 14-year-old daughter who is constantly on her phones and things. And
bet you don't know what she's looking at.
And it's, you talked about multiple Instagram.
Yeah.
And whatever. And I know she has multiple because of it. Showed up.
Apparently it's really common. Yeah, I initially panicked and went, why have they got more than one account?
But it's that, then me trying to, this is not about me, but then me trying to think, well, you've got real life awfulness there. Mm. But from a very selfish perspective, I still have a chance of, hang on a minute, I should be dealing with that right now. There will be other parents, I believe, looking at this saying, well, what can we do now? So
I have friends, parents, or with, does that come out the right way? Friends with teenage children. And they often come home and start talking to the children. And they go, oh, have you been speaking to Ellen today? Because I said, right, you need to check for this. You need to look at their feed. You need to ask them. I mean, if you can get your teenager to show you, I would have said to Jools, can you show me your TikTok? What sort of things pop up on your feed? Because you can quite quickly see whether it's pornographic, whether it's violent. But just play dumb parent. Just show me how it works and how does that work and where do you get messages? And so do strangers message you? The younger children in particular, on Snapchat, do you have your live location on? You can be followed by a whole load of weirdos that are following your kids around. You wouldn't allow that, normally, as a normal person, allowing them to follow your children. And who can message them? So I was actually at a rugby game, a networking event. I was talking to somebody's kid who was there, was 8 years old. And I said, "Oh, what games do you play?" Knowing exactly where I was going with this in my mind. He said, "I play Roblox." And I said, "Oh, do you talk to any strangers?" And he went, "Oh, but only Lucy." And I said, "Oh, Lucy." I said, "Dad, listen to this." I said, "He plays with Lucy. How old's Lucy?" "She's 15. And I pointed at the other guy next to us, who's a 60-odd-year-old man. And I went, "He's also called Lucy and he's 15 too." And the child laughed. And I went, "Dad, you need a conversation about your security settings because the child is adamant he's talking to a 15-year-old called Lucy." Well, we don't know that. And that was just a massive eye-opener for that parent.
Yeah, I want to pick up on this. There's lots of advice out there from all sorts of people. You've got to do this, you've got to do this. So I'm going to ask it in a different way.
Okay.
Because we've all got people with teenage children, boys and girls. We know what we're going to get back when we say, "Let's see your phone." We know what's coming.
I could imagine that response. Yeah, it won't go well.
I think and now I'm going to let you answer it. If you could go back now, I think I'm fair in saying you would go into any battle with Jools.
Yes, I would do.
Yeah, do you see the point?
Yes, I would do.
You would literally go, yeah, I get what you're saying.
But I do get that if I'd said to Jools, "I'm taking your phone off you," it would be mayhem. That would be the end of the world. But Jools and I were always quite open. I would probably sit him down and say, "Jools, I've heard about this other boy that took his life and it could have something to do with social media. And I'm concerned what you see. Can we have a real honest discussion about what you're seeing on your phone? And it's not me trying to, over-parent you. I just want to protect you." And I would. But I had that sort of conversation. I could talk to Jools like that. I don't know whether he would have shown me everything. He probably would have shown me some, maybe. But I think if you can get them to open up to you, and I would do that. And Jools and I did have difficult conversations. That he one night we have an app which I think lots of teenagers do, Life 360, and it shows where the child is, so you can follow where they are. And a friend of mine messaged me and said, "Where are the boys?" And looked at the app and went, "Oh, they're somewhere in Charlton Kings or whatever." And they went, "Okay." And then the next day on Facebook it said, "If you have teenage boys somewhere in Charlton Kings last night, you want to check where they were," because there was a whole load of there was like 50 kids all in a derelict hotel. And I sat Jools down on the stairs and said, "Jools, you can't do that." He went, "Well, nobody owns it." I said, "Well, somebody does own it." And we sat there and had this conversation, and it's illegal and you can't do it. And he was crying by the end of it. I was saying, "You just can't." And we had a real honest conversation about it. And he's crying and he said, but mum, you would have done." And I went, "Yes, I probably would have done. But you can't. And these are the reasons why." And tried to educate him. But, to a kid, that's very exciting, isn't it? A derelict building. And he didn't know the harm or that he was doing anything wrong. So just trying to have that open conversation with them, I think.
Let's go back to you. Tomorrow, we'll just pick tomorrow. When you go to bed tonight, do you plan for tomorrow? Can you plan of how you are going to feel? Have you any idea what your emotions are going to be? And do you put anything in place tonight or tomorrow morning to ensure that it's less hurtful or less painful? Or do you just let each day happen?
I let each day happen. I very much go with the flow. Sometimes the run up to an event can be more of a worry. So you're anxious. "Oh, Jools' birthday's coming up or something, and the run up to it is sometimes worse because the actual day, well, I'm very fortunate. I have all his friends still come around on his birthday and things like that. So the actual day is not as bad as the thinking is going to be really bad. And next July, I'm already thinking about it. He would be 18. And that's going to be emotionally hard, but maybe it won't be on the day. But I don't plan anymore. And I always used to play, as a financial advisor, I planned things. And I don't plan. I very much go with the flow. Like before Christmas, I jumped on a flight, went to see some friends in Denver last minute. And very much live my life to, do I want to do it? Yes. And if I don't want to do it, no, I'm not going to do it.
What's the future?
I don't know. I don't know. I wish I had a plan as such. I am determined I will change the law. I am determined that somehow we will change social media for children. That it cannot continue like this. And I have to make something positive out of this. But it seems so slow.
Do you not believe you already have?
No, I struggled to see that. I guess I can see people have gone and talked to their kids, but I don't feel I've achieved anything yet. Not yet.
The campaign you're on, and people seeing you use the stat. We don't know what the stats are, but you said if a parent loses a child, the chances of then through suicide is high. I'm not being flippant here, but you've already proved that you can get through because you are still with us.
Yeah.
And you sat here talking, inspiring people today. I don't think you set out to inspire.
No, I set out to save some lives. I didn't. I don't find myself inspirational in that way. I just am sharing my story to hopefully make a difference to others. And if somehow they can glimmer some hope that when the world feels like everything is a mess, that somehow there's a little piece of glimmer of light that you grab it and hold on to it. And I've always said, I've met a lot of other bereaved parents, if I can help anybody, and I don't care in what area it is, if I can help somebody said to me once, the only time you should look down at somebody is if you're helping them up. And that really resonated with me. And I thought, I like that. Along with a great one I heard the other day was, if you're going to miss the bus, make sure you're running for it, which I thought was a great expression. And just give it a go, try. And if you fail, you fail, but you got to give it your best shot. Try everything.
What makes you happy now?
Gardening. I don't know. I don't know why.
Where did that come from?
I love it. I love it.
Have you always been a gardener?
No, not at all. And after Jools died, I remember seeing things growing in the garden and think, why are you growing? Jools isn't growing. And I was getting quite cross at the plants. But for me...
This part of me would love to listen to lots of your discussions.
I'm really not going to do lots of gardening.
With yourself.
Oh, myself?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because, it's like when you were on the campaign that you were shouting upstairs.
Yeah.
Knowing full well he's not there.
No, I know.
But you still talk to him.
Yeah. And I do still sometimes say, come on, Jools, what have we got on today? What are we going to do? What are we doing? And I don't know what I believe in the spirit world.
Do you think we're almost into your mum's world a little.
No, I know.
Do you think he can hear you?
I had a strange vision of Jools after he died and before the funeral. And I came back into the house after seeing him in the morgue. And I closed my eyes and I had my hands over my eyes. And I said, I was thinking, I can see him. And my partner at the time said, do you want the curtains closed? Thinking the sun was in my eyes. And I went, no, just leave me alone for a minute. I hadn't been drinking. I hadn't taken any drugs. I had my hands over my eyes. And I had this very, very clear vision of Jools. And he was being led by somebody with a sapphire and diamond ring on her finger. Rather like this one, funnily enough. And I didn't own this at the time. And Jools was being led, and the person had the ring on the right hand. And he was then in a car blowing me kisses, sort of saying goodbye. And I remember thinking, I know I need to let you go, come back and see me again. Which was really weird because there's not one part of me I wanted to let him go. But I remember thinking that. And I thought, I've had this really weird experience. And I rang my dad afterwards and said, did my gran, your mum, used to wear a ring on her right hand? And he went, yes, she did. And I said, what was it like? And he said, I don't remember. I rang my aunt and she said, I think it was a sapphire surrounded by diamonds. And then my partner at the time bought my ring for me because this is my memory of Jools. I always wear it, whether I'm gardening, anything. I always wear it. It's exactly what I saw. And now I think back and think, maybe it wasn't my gran. Maybe it was Jools leading me because I've got it on my hand. And so sometimes when I say, Jools, what are we doing? I like to think that there's somewhere and he's leading me. We're going on this journey together, but maybe he's got a better idea of where we're going with it. But so I always wear this ring and I think it's my thing of Jools leading me.
I know you will continue on with the campaign. You will get there, won't you? You will achieve what you want to achieve.
I'm not failing. I don't know what success looks like, but I'm not failing. I will get there.
have to be careful there, because what does success look like for you?
Well, for me, that's quite true. Success is different in different people. For me, it's seeing that written down in the law and making a difference for other parents.
When you asked me when we were downstairs about what you're doing why you're doing with the podcast, the reason for the podcast is to get people to talk. And it's not to give lots of advice. It's not to give lots of direction. It's to give, because I have a real concern with there's so much content out there which is so negative. But it doesn't have to be hyper positive. It just needs to be real. And you then say, you don't know whether you're inspiring. The reason I wanted to do a podcast was literally for this, for you to come in and talk so openly and so freely and have a tear, but also smile. Because there is somebody out there who is having a really tough time.
Yeah.
And I do believe in the universe. I believe the universe brings us together. And this part of this content will land somewhere on a phone or on a computer screen or on a whatever. And they will listen to you.
Yeah.
And you will make a difference.
I've always loved helping people. I get a real satisfaction out of helping somebody, whether that be yesterday, actually, I'd been helping a friend in a charity shop, and there was some flea tablets for a dog, and she said, "Oh, we can't sell them." And I thought, I'll put them in my handbag. The next time I see a homeless person, their dog might like them. And I gave them to this homeless chap yesterday, and I said, "Anything you like? Can I get you some food?" And he said, "No, somebody else just got me some." And I thought, I made the effort to put those little flea things in my bag, and it was something so simple, but it was a nice feeling to go, well, actually, I could give it to somebody else. And I do like helping people.
And you do it in your own way. But I think I was going to say my worry for you. That's not the right word.
Okay.
The campaign you're on, you will keep going. I will keep talking because I just want you to see the amazing things you're doing without knowing you're doing it.
Okay.
It's that inspiration. People will watch this. People will be inspired. People will have that moment. And I think you will trigger people, and that they will move forwards.
Yeah.
And they'll constantly remember your words and how you are and how you come across.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure, a privilege, an honor to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alex.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. If you have been affected by anything within our discussion today on the podcast, please reach out to someone. You can speak to Propius on 0800 068 4141. This is a charity for the prevention of young suicide, people under the age of 35 in the UK. The Samaritans are on 116 123 or mind 0300 102 1234. If you are in real crisis and are considering acting, just please call 999.